Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of What If Civilization Started Over. In the last episode, we saw World War V continue, and, well, it's going to be. Well, we saw World War III continue, and it's going to be no different this episode. Um, one of the big events from the last episode we saw was there were rebellions in the, the five countries, or the five strongest country, not five strongest, the five big countries of the world, the five quinpolar countries in the quinpolar system we had go on. Some of them had four rebellions, some had five. I think it was just four or five. No, yeah, four or five rebellions. But yeah. So if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like and subscribe, and let's get started. So, we'll start off over here with Alaska, if I can be on the right layer. But Alaska, they are greatly pushing back Canada. Now they're starting to get aid country, from other nations in the Triangle Alliance. Um, but eventually they get to the point where they've recaptured all of their territory, and now they're starting to re-enter Canadian territory. But they're not re-entering it. Down here, it's their territory. It was their territory to begin with. So, but they're starting to enter this territory, and they're doing quite well. Same thing with British Columbia. They're getting pretty far into Canada. Or Oregon doing the same thing. They're pretty far there too. Um, but the one doing the best is West Mexico, which we'll see in a second. But they managed to capture the capital of central Canada, and then they move up over here as well. They're doing this at the same time. It's like they're invading the same nation with different forces at once. Down here they don't really fight with Mexico in the American territories. Um, they kind of fight a little bit over here in their own, but um, the two of them have agreed to a ceasefire as they focus on the bigger threat here. The same thing goes with the Caribbean nation. These three have all agreed to ceasefire. Um, and Mex even with Mexico and the Caribbean nation, um, we see that Mexico and the Caribbean nation have agreed that uh, they will no land gains will be happening between these two countries in their territories. So, um, that's good for Mexico. What's also good for Mexico is that since America's capital was also captured in the last episode, um, they're falling pretty quickly too. And the first of the countries to reach the border of the Great Lakes Empire is the Caribbean nation. As it turns out, they they're actually like a really strong country. They have the biggest navy out of almost every country in this region, other than the Great Lakes Empire, even a bigger navy than America. France left most of its, or Switzerland left most of its navy to the Caribbean nation because they didn't think they'd really need it much out here because mostly it's land fronts. And they thought they'd have the backing of the two Iberian countries here and some other countries. They did not have that backing. So, yeah. The war is not going too well for the major powers at all, and especially those major powers. Alright, we see America will officially surrender, and soon after, Central Canada surrenders. We see that it just we end up seeing that the this country over here, they just kind of gave up a while ago. They they haven't really been sending in supplies or anything. They gave up a while ago. But we see the Great Lakes Empire, they're just gonna hold out. They've been long preparing for this to happen. However, they did not prepare for a internal rebellion. So they're trying to figure out what to do here. They kind of hold out in this region up here. However, the rest, like the other areas, are kind of falling apart a lot. The biggest areas we see are, well, and mainly in the south it happens, but yeah. So we s- we see the Great Lakes Empire. They're they've got to surrender soon. They're wasting their resources. Even Niagara, which is the weakest of the rebellions, is able to do some stuff out here. And well, eventually we see it gets to the point where the Lime West Mexican country will make a breakthrough, and the Great Lakes Empire is just they're falling apart at this point. We see West Mexico is pushing in from almost every possible side, and but we see the Great Lakes Empire manages to hold out on the Upper Peninsula a bit, but that holdout will not last very long, as eventually we see the Pink Team Rebellion is going to be able to capture the capital, and then this light blue country also captures the capital and other major cities, and well, we see the Great Lakes Empire will finally surrender. Finally. These guys, since they gave up, they're just kind of left alone. Um, so now, it's not. Now we see the war kind of shifts focus from well, as this is happening, every other event in this episode is playing out at the same time, pretty much. I'm just gonna going through everything that happens. We see this kind of Guyana country. I think these guys are more Guyanas than Venezuela. But this Guyana country, they fall over to Brazil and the uh, Caribbean country. Not very good for them. Coming over here, these are uh, we'll do Ethiopia. Yeah. Ethiopia will withdraw all its forces out from the Great Empire. Um, they also will withdraw their forces from Tanzania. However, we see Tanzania is kind of picked back up on a bit by the gold team, who manages to keep a hold of the coast. However, the gold team will end up proving that they are strong, and by that, they end up proving they are very strong, as they are able to push in to South Africa quite a lot. They also will push into these guys a bit. You know, here, that's darker. Doesn't matter. They capture all of Madagascar, it ends up being, as Korea doesn't supply their allies. So, yep, that doesn't end well. This green team here will kind of push in. They also made a peace or a ceasefire with the gold team. They knew they weren't gonna win this. They knew that both of them knew the only way either of them could win this war is if they pieced out with each other and focused on South Africa, which ended up happening. And we see the country is pretty much split into two. It's divided into two. So these guys are going to send their aid back up to their allies. However, these rebellions are getting pretty strong. You see the Tanzanians recapture some of this. Um, they do want to get back down here, but they have some more land that they could go for here, and they do just that. So the Tanzanian rebellion has grown quite big. This light green rebellion also spreads out as it also gets quite big. Um, I don't know how long that's been there. We see this area kind of just this. There's a big group of Ethiopian soldiers that are kind of left fighting out here, but they are unable to get supplies, so they kind of just fall over. The south of it kind of falls over to Tanzania, while the northern part will fall over to this lime green. we then see, oops, we then see this rebellion kind of spreads out into the east. The purple team's rebellion spreads out here. It also kind of goes into the south a bit. They capture that coastline up there. And we see the Kenyans, who were once much stronger than Ethiopia, and also in this area. Um, they are also the strongest of these rebellions. Tanzania, I'm not counting as a rebellion though, because it's more of a country that's also having people rebel up here. We see this line team kind of comes in. They take all of this here, and then we see the purple team kind of takes over the rest of this land, including the capital. And we also get those. Alright, so now Ethiopia has also fallen, although at this time, we see, at this time the gold team is still fighting. However, Tanzania is pushing back against them, and eventually we see that Tanzanian or the gold team will agree to go to a peace or ceasefire with Tanzania, but um it's good for them on both sides because on one side the gold team might not be able to fight off Tanzania as they seem to be getting aid. Um, Also they have these three rebellions which would probably help them, but also with Tanzania, if those three don't help them, then the gold team might be able to take them over. All right, up here, we see morale for the Great Empire starts rapidly falling after news is found out that there's rebellions going on in their territory, and a lot of soldiers are also just like switching sides. And eventually, the Persian Gulf country is fully liberated. uh, Over here for Switzerland, and yes, we are switching straight to Switzerland, even though the Great Empire didn't collapse yet. but that's because Switzerland did. Also, by the way, the order that these countries are collapsing, like how I'm showing them, is the order that they actually collapse in. First, it was the Great Lakes Empire, then Ethiopia, or actually, this little bit of land here does not go to them. You see, the Dutch also will kind of invade into the territory right there. So, any Dutch fans, good for you. Who knows? Maybe the Dutch Empire will come back. You never know. And maybe it'll be in real WICSO too. But we see the Swiss capitals captured by Catalonia, and these rebellions up here push a bit more into Swiss territory. But with the German rebellion, we also see them pushing into this light blue country. And another person we see doing the exact same thing is the Adriatic Union, who I forgot their name a lot, a lot. Um, they capture the capital of Lake Baikal, and all it takes is that for them to surrender. Um, most of the countries here have been fighting on for a while after their capital's captured, but not them. But we see Switzerland also surrenders. So that's three of the empires down. Now we come over to the Great Empire as their territory starting to get pushed into. And now the focus has kind of shifted from taking out all of the weaker nations around you to sending aid over to your friends and uh, or to maybe even your friends or enemies in other countries. We see this kind of like greenish country also pushing up here. Um, yeah, but here we actually see a pretty game-changing event happen. I mean, it's kind of game-changing, but you see, West Africa and Ghana will convince most of the Circle Alliance to join the war. And also, you might be wondering why there wasn't fighting over here. Um, these two like agreed to a ceasefire like right as the war started. But now these three are all together gonna have to fight the Circle Alliance, or will they? Not really. These two leave. He doesn't. This guy here does not leave the Cross Alliance though. So all of these countries are gonna be invading him. Also, these two here, the Great Empire, even Gibraltar will probably be invaded. But they're just here to stop the war from getting any worse. And when asked what they mean by getting any worse, I mean, because they are like joining the war and creating new front lines. But what they mean by getting worse is it's found out that some of the countries have still been producing nukes. And well, they don't want more nuclear devastation it's kind of as it's found out that the radiation from some of the nukes dropped near these guys' territories has spread into their territories and is affecting their civilians. So they're kind of here to put a stop to this. Um, Up here, Sweden left the war. Um, they don't join the Circle Alliance, but they also will still join the Circle Alliance to like stop the war from happening. They got nuked on their own, even so. That's their reason for joining. Um, so yeah, Sweden. They're also a top 20 power. They were a top 20 power but I think they were top 20 power when the war started. Yeah, 13. So, they're able to do some damage. Um, Russia, Russia rejoices. Not for long though. Their forces extremely weak, tired. A lot of them just don't realize that Sweden is coming for them. So, they just kind of, a lot of Russian forces kind of go back home. Some still like fight in their territory. You even see some kind of get sent over here to try and liberate these guys. None of it works, and eventually Sweden enters Russian territory. But also the Adriatic Union also does, and these two are kind of opposing sides in the war, but they agreed not to fight because they don't need to. There's not really a need to fight each other, and at this point they're kind of fighting for the same cause even. These guys are more so fighting because like the Great Empire in yeah, but still we see them. They're not they both of these two countries aren't fans of Russia even though these two are in the same alliance. But that's enough of the lore dropping. All right. The rebellions in the Great Empire. Well, the Purple Rebellion has spread out quite a lot, especially in like the Thracian area and Anatolia. We see it spread up into this part of Anatolia as well. The Crimean Rebellion kind of focuses itself along the Black Sea. They don't really go much inland until there is no land left for them on the Black Sea, and then they start expanding inland. It shouldn't say expanding, but yeah. We see the Lime team that was over here. Uh, they kind of get like it. I don't know. I don't know what I was just saying. So, the Anatolian Union fully occupies their territory instead of it being shared now. and um, the last remaining like, fighters in Russia, they will like set themselves up down here. They're just here so they can get their claims back from this area, or at least some of them. They just want land back. So, I mean, their capital is like right there, so they've got a fair point. The Caspian Rebellion, which was also the largest rebellion at the end of the last episode, um, continues to be large and growing. As we see it will expand to take over all of this area here, and even some lands north of there. Mm. Because the Great Empire in this series lasted longer than the Old Empire did. Right. We see Caucasia kind of it goes up north some, also goes south, but they are the ones to capture the capital of the Great Empire. And you've probably noticed a theme-ish. That is rebellions taking over the capital of countries. And that will continue as we move over to Korea. Or will it? We see the purple team, yeah, the purple team will take over Cyprus and the rest of Anatolia. And lastly, we do have Azerbaijan. They take over this, kind of take over all this and that. And that's kind of where it ends for the rebellions taking over the land, other than Caucasia does get that little bit there. Um, we see these like there's just Russian militias that are just popping up along the border here. Um, and they're able to actually get they're actually able to do quite a bit in this region. Um, then we see the Adriatic Union and these guys here, and like pretty much every other country in Europe is kind of just gonna join the side of these guys up here, and they're just not gonna. These Some of them won't go to war at all. Some of them will stay on the side of the country they're currently allied with. Some of them just um, there's not a single neutral country in Europe. Dang. Oh, Iceland. Um, but like Iceland stays neutral. Same with Greenland, although they're not in Europe. But and then some of them also stay fighting like just on their own at this point. Some of the countries that stay with who they're fighting is Catalonia or the three Iberians. Um, but they'll all agree to a ceasefire with their own, with like the ones who switch sides, but the ones who started the whole like switching sides thing, they go to war with them. But that doesn't end well for some of them, as West Africa will kind of just take over all that, and that's all they really wanted. But they'll still move into Gibraltar and take over quite a bit of it. However, they do not enter into the Dark Scientines territory, and they just kind of stay here. Um, as there's just a big front line right here. They are able to move up a bit more towards the border with Catalonia, but they can't get much further than that, and they don't want to use their nukes. The reason they cannot get much further than that is right over here, as these guys, and they kind of focus more on these guys. The Mediterranean country and Libya both stayed on the cross alliance side, on the cross alliances side, but yeah, they don't really do much. They've never really provided much in this war. Um, so we see this kind of spread out a bit in here, and then the Saharan country will capture the rest of the blue team, and with aid from West Africa and the Guinea nation, they move into Libya. Libya also loses their capital. This is over quite a bit of time at this point. Um, well, like at this point, the Great Empire has completely or almost completely fallen, other than just a little bit of land out in Egypt. And we see what that looks like right here. So the Adriatic Union has gotten all of that. This gold team here, they have managed to capture all of this. They also will be completely pushed out of Tibet, though, and Tibet has also agreed to a ceasefire with them as well as Persia. Um, but Persia will actually do quite a bit of damage to the Great Empire, despite being almost completely invaded by them and Tibet. Um, we see the Persian Gulf country with aid from the Emirati nation. They take over quite a lot, and by quite a lot, I mean quite a lot. And then most of the rest of this will follow, have at this point fallen over to the green team here. And this is what the Great Empire looked like at the time Libya was fully captured. Well, actually, there was also some like pushes by this country down here. this is what the Great Empire looks like at the time Libya was captured. All right. These guys also push into the Great Empire now, and I mean they've got aid from like most of Africa, so I think this will be able to be pretty easy. And as it's slowly revealed over time as this war goes on, these rebellions definitely have been getting funded, and we see that especially right here as these two don't fight, even though they're well, like they are kind of opposing sides. Not really though, but yeah, the Circle Alliance was funding all uh the Circle Alliance funded all 23 rebellions. Or not 20, there weren't 23. There's 22. Or was it 22? Yeah, 22 rebellions. All 22 rebellions were funded by the Circle Alliance. No, 21 rebellions. Yeah, 22. I keep forgetting these guys. Alright, this green team pushes out this tiny militia that was left here. They make a peace deal with the South Chinese country, and that said South Chinese country will actually turn on China's back as they work with um the this light green country to take over like the rest of China. And actually they get all of that out of China, which allows for like Baikal to focus mainly on Korea. However, we see Korea kind of defy the pattern. Um, Firstly, Korea is actually able to push out the southern part of this rebellion. Japan, they kinda are starting to lose now, but over here they are also able to push this Cyan rebellion out. Other than on this island where this rebellion actually happens to be like flourishing. I don't know if flourishing would be the right word, but yeah. But Korea is they're actually doing kind of well in the war ish. They're still losing the war though, as Lake Baikal it has at this point also taken over like a lot of their territory. But we see Korea piecing out with everyone before they lose completely, so that's good. However, they do end up losing before they piece out. They do end up losing Jeju Island. Like, this they lose all of Japan, so they've lost all of this, and yeah, they didn't own the Kuril Islands. All right, so they've lost their like gateway out here, but they've pieced out and have left the war. They knew they were gonna lose anyway, and that might have been their only smart decision in the entire war. All right, down here, we see these countries, all of them, kind of like they peace out with the Circle Alliance, so they don't have to worry about that. But we'll come down to Red Australia, as Red Australia also pieced out with the Circle Alliance. We see a lot of countries actually did that pretty quickly on, but the blue team very quickly invaded, their capital very quickly captured, and very quickly surrendered. And then last one standing, you're not standing much longer. And New Zealand just surrenders out of fear. So Red Australia just kind of won this war pretty easily, and at least on their terms. All right, out here, things aren't going too well for the Bangladesh country. Their capital was also captured last episode. The same also was said for China, but they're doing not well. We see Pakistan will start to invade them, and that's when it's pretty much over. Pakistan is also able to push India out of their territory. India will peace out with them, and India will decide to betray or betray Bangladesh, and they actually join these two in war. There are three sides fighting in this right now that are invading Bangladesh. You have the Square Alliance, you have the Diamonds up here, and you have the Cross Alliance. I don't know if I was maybe just the only one to notice that, but well, actually, now you probably all noticed that, and probably some of you already noticed that. But Tibet will push in, and eventually we see Myanmar or Bangladesh will surrender. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. We come back down here real quickly, as this country is like the last one really left, and they're toast. This green team is the one that captures the rest of their territory here. So, all right. Well, I think that is every front line has finished its war, except for the Russian front line out here. But Russia just kind of surrenders. Um, other than down, like they didn't surrender, they still took that, but they also surrendered to the circles, or everyone invading them. So, yeah. But that will do it for today's episode of What If Civilization Started Over. I know the war seemed kind of rushed at the end, but hey, peace treaty next episode. World's gonna look a whole lot different. And trust me when I say that. Well, at the end of the episode it would. But alright. If you enjoyed today's episode of What If Civilization Started Over, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.